Welcome everybody, Croeso, to this Hub Cymru Africa workshop about getting communities online. So what I'll do first is go through some of the ground rules and a little bit of information about the workshop generally. One thing to note is that this session will be recorded so that people are able to access it online later. So if you don't want to be visible, then please turn off your camera and you can change your name if you like, so nobody can see that you are here. It's very important that we monitor and evaluate our work to make sure that we can improve and strengthen the things that we're doing. So please do participate in that. We'll be sharing some polls later that we'd really like you to take part in. We would encourage you to participate actively in this meeting. If you are happy to and you have the data allowances, then it would be lovely to see your faces, but you don't have to have your camera on and you don't have to participate. If you would rather just have this on in the background and not engage with it actively, then that's fine as well. We have got a lot to cover, and so we'll be a little bit nervous about opening everything up to too much discussion. If you have any questions, we really do want to hear your questions and we want to make sure they're answered. If you have any questions, then please do raise your hand, and you can do that using the little tools on Zoom, or you can put a question in the chat box and we will come to those questions. Because of the dangers of too much background noise, please ensure that you're muted unless you're actively speaking, because we don't want to spoil everything by too much noise going on. Also, I have to make it very clear this is a safe space for everybody, and especially for minoritized people. No form of abuse will be tolerated. We will be talking about the dangers of online abuse and harassment, and we do encourage challenging and constructive conversation, but people's lived experiences are not up for debate. And if anything happens, if anything concerns you or bothers you through anybody's behaviour during this workshop and you'd like to make a safeguarding complaint, then please do visit the Welsh Centre for International Affairs website, which is there. It's wcia.org.uk, and search for our whistleblowing policy, and you'll be able to make a complaint there. What I would say also, oh no, actually that's coming up in a bit. So I'll pop through the agenda briefly, just so we know what's going to happen. Everything on the agenda is probably a little bit approximate, depending on the way that the conversation goes. But essentially, I'll be starting off with some information on the basics and some first things to consider before working on projects to get people online. We're going to have a case study from Zambia. I'll be talking a bit about internet access in Africa and the dangers of technology driving inequality. We'll have a case study from Kenya. Then I'll talk about the digital divide and the 5 A's of technology access. We'll have a case study then from Zimbabwe. We'll be talking a bit about risks of going online and risks of engaging in some of these projects. We'll have another case study from Zimbabwe, this one from Community Centre, and I'll talk a little bit about getting funding and some of the final things to consider. And then the idea is that we will close the workshop at 1 o'clock UK time. And so a little bit here about getting the most from the workshop today. We would love it if you could introduce yourself, please, in the chat box. We'd love to know who you are, where you're from, what organisation that you're working for. If you have a partner in Africa or if you have a partner in Wales, we'd love to know a bit about that. And also to tell us a bit about what you'd like to get out of the event today. The idea is not that you'll just receive lots of information from lots of experts. We're all here to learn from each other. There are a lot of people who've come, who've got lots of interesting experience to share. So very much I'd like you to be using the chat box to chat, to share links, to share information, to ask questions. And we will compile links, extra information, and the notes from this workshop. All of that will be shared later, and you will be able to access the event online on YouTube within a couple of weeks, I would imagine. So what I'd like to do first is just to, or actually, I don't know, is there anything interesting in the chat box? Let's have a look at the chat box. Brilliant.
Do we need to do the first poll, Julian?
Oh, yes, that's a very good idea, Kath. Wonderful. Brilliant. So Howard's in the chat box and has introduced himself. It would be really good to see lots of information in there from everybody who's coming along today to see what it is that you're here for, what it is that you think you'd like to gain from the event. And we will keep an eye on the chat box as well as the workshop is going on to make sure that if there are topics that haven't been covered or that we're not going to cover, that we can either come to them at the end and maybe get some information that way, or we can follow up in some other ways. Because this project is being run for a year. It's been funded by the Waterloo Foundation to support small organisations and medium organisations within the Wales Africa community to make better use of digital tools. So not seeing any of that information in the chat box. Nobody's giving me any of those things about who they are, where they're from, or what they want. Oh, wonderful. We've got something from Alison. Fantastic. Brilliant. I can see things filling up there now. So I just needed to goad you a lot. That's clearly the way forward. Right, so I'm going to talk very briefly about some of the basics of getting online and getting communities online. There are many communities in Africa who are benefiting a lot from getting online. People are able to use the internet for education, for economic empowerment, for cultural, for social reasons, and clearly the internet around the world has revolutionized the way that many people live. So the very, very basic start for what you need. If you need to get a community online, then you need to have a device. That could be a computer, it could be a phone, it could be all sorts of things. But essentially you need a device which is capable of accessing the internet and getting that information there. That device will need to be running some software. You will need to get that device online. If it's a telephone, then it will have all these things embedded. But if it's not, you'll probably need a modem, or you'll need a router to get the information from the internet into your device and get it onto other devices. The other thing that you need is an internet service provider, and unfortunately these things are still not free. So you'll need to have a financial relationship with a company that can provide you with access to the internet, and you will need power. And we found that this is a major issue in many parts of Africa, where actually there is not reliable electricity, and that it's not enough just to put in access to the internet, but to put in devices, that it's very important that people have got power in order to use those devices. And then finally, on this list of the basics, you'll need the ability to use these things. And so what I'd say is that it's very important, if you're planning any project, to try to get a group of people online, to get them to benefit from the advantages of the internet. Then you don't want to start with a project in your head. You don't want to start already having worked out what sort of tools you're going to employ. What you need to do very much is start with the user, start with the people who you hope will benefit from this project. And when I say start with the user, you need to consider where they are. You need to consider very much what abilities they already have, what resources that they have access to where they are. And you need to work with those people to talk about what it is that they need and what it is that they say they need support with. The next part of that is understanding the context, and the people that you're working with will be able to help you to understand the context of where they're living. And they will have better intelligence than you will about how people locally are accessing the internet in the areas that they're living in. You need to consider, is there cable internet? Is there a really good signal available? Is there a decent telephone signal available in the community that you want to work with? And is there power available? And then the other thing that I found in talking to a lot of groups who are running these sorts of projects in Wales, or from Wales, is that what they found is that these things are enhanced massively when they work with local experts within the African communities that they're working with. So are there local teachers, are there traders, are there other experts who can support the work that you're doing? We've seen particularly that if organizations can develop good long-term relationships with teachers or with shops even, and providers of these technologies, then they have got somebody on the ground who can help to deal with any problems and deal with any situations as they arise. Right, so what I'd like to do now is go on to our first case study, and I'd like to introduce Howard. If I can find Howard, if I can stop screen sharing, wonderful. As somebody who's dealt with a lot of these issues, who's worked with the community to find out what they want, and has worked with others within the area to provide expertise, is Howard from Giakonda Solar Schools. Howard, I'd like you to get to kick off, please, and start telling us a little bit about your projects and what you've done.
Yeah, the first thing I'd like to say is that all the stuff I'm going to talk about, I've got it as notes, and I'm going to pass that on to Julian at the end so he can distribute it and you can have a read through, because I know what it's like listening to someone. It can be confusing. Well, we started in Zambia in 2014, which is a long time ago, and through hundreds of mistakes, we've reached today where we think we know a little bit about what we're doing. But even on the last visit we had this year, a few weeks ago, I realized that I still don't know enough. So first thing I'll say is, don't be put off by not knowing things. It's incredibly easy to find people in the area you're looking at, the country you're looking at, who can help with pretty much anything. And we made a point over the years of coming together with several people. The most important for us was the communities, obviously, that we're working with. The DEBS, the Department of Education Board Secretary of the area we are working in, Siavonga, which is in Southern Province, Zambia. We weren't looking in the town, we were working in the rural areas. And also Muhunya Solar, which is a solar panel company, a solar company that produce all sorts of things. They're based in Lusaka. And we went around several organizations relating to solar equipment before we landed with Muhunya Solar. And the reason why we landed with them is because they were helpful. They didn't want just to have the work we were doing. They were interested in what we were doing. They were surprised that someone was caring enough to want to spend their time helping other people. And they generally gave us the impression that they were nice people to work with. So our primary liaison is with the Department of Education Board Secretary for Siavonga, and she was extremely helpful in helping us to identify what it is we could contribute to. And in Siavonga, there's about 40 schools, and of those, something like 36, somewhere around there, didn't have any solar power. And when I first went there, I went there as part of Swansea University project, and I brought along a solar panel and a computer and some LED lights, because I wasn't aware of the desperate need in these countries to this area to improve education through the basics that we take for granted here. So the first schools we visited and put some solar panels in were grateful, very grateful, but what we put in was pretty hopeless, really. It was enough power to light a small office and to run a Raspberry Pi computer. That's a very small computer, which is very low in energy consumption. And well, looking back on it, I'm almost ashamed of what we were doing, because we didn't really have a clue. But after 2 visits there, talking to a group called the Siavonga Nutrition Group, and to the Debs and to Mhunya Solar, we started to put together what we might need to provide the school with a reasonable amount of resources. So what I'd like to do now is just quickly talk you through one of our last projects that we were working at Siavonga School. It's again in Southern Province. It's off the road, but it's not too far off the road to make it inaccessible. We chose this school with the help of Debs because when it had no electrical power, we made a point of working with schools without any of these resources. It had a reasonably large school population, so we could help more people. That was the thought on that. It was reasonably accessible, as I say, with the lands. We borrowed the Debs Lands cruiser to get there, and it wasn't much of a problem. It was also equidistant from several other schools in the area, and we thought that if we were going to put some resources in this school, it would be useful if those resources could be used by other schools as well. One of the problems we always have is thinking, well, what do I do? Do I put a small amount of resources in a lot of schools, or a large amount of resources in one school? That's really a heartbreaking decision to make. But we chose Siavonga because of its location and the other things I mentioned. And we also thought, well, if we're going to put something decent into this school, something which I would consider the minimum requirement, which is more than what we have been putting in, then we need to think about it very carefully. And the first thing we did, as you can see in the notes later, is what would we like to put in there? And we decided that on a start, we would put in lighting throughout the school. It's only it's a small traditional Zambian block school, which has 3 classrooms, head teacher's office, a deputy head teacher's office, and a small office and store for the staff. So that was the school we were working on. We thought we couldn't afford a lot. We decided we would like to put in some computer equipment, and we also decided we'd like it to be able to communicate to the outside world through the use of the internet. That wasn't a primary consideration for us, because we also took into this school, and we've taken it into all the schools in Southern Siavonga, the Raspberry Pi computer, which acts as a hotspot. You can connect to it just like you connect to the internet. It's not the internet, so you don't get things like WhatsApp and email and Zoom. That doesn't come into it. But you can access huge, literally huge resources on a small Raspberry Pi computer. There are several thousand videos on there which are related to maths and science education. There are literally hundreds of books in the local languages, Bembe, Tonga, and Nyanja, that can be put up onto a screen so that you can have what we in the UK call an hour of literacy, where you can take kids through reading. So we decided that, we've always decided that is preferable to access to the internet for all sorts of weird reasons, not for professional development of teachers, not for communication. It just doesn't work for that. So, you know, the internet is good for that, but what we've been putting in is good for the kids in the school. So we decided to put a Raspberry Pi computer with the resources in there, and then we thought we would try and put as many Raspberry Pi computers, set up traditional computers, just like you would use in an office, into the schools, into this school. And we thought we could probably accommodate 5 computers and 3 laptops. So that was our focus. We want 5 computers, 3 laptops, light the school, projector, not a projector, sorry, a TV, because we found TVs were more useful than projectors. And we tried to network these computers so that they could be a more useful resource, but we'll come to that perhaps in a minute. So having decided what we were going to do and making a note of the fact we were not thinking of putting a fridge in, we were not thinking of putting a freezer in, these things you have to think about because they impact heavily on the amount of energy you want. So you have to know the amount of energy that you're going to be required to collect from the sun. So we sat down and worked out what the energy requirements for each device would be. And that comes, the energy requirement for a device is measured in watts. And if you're going to have a computer that takes 3 watts of power on for 10 hours, that's 30 watt hours. That's the amount of electricity that it's going to use, and you have to accommodate that. We use batteries to help store surplus energy during the day. We put solar panels on the roof, and the solar panels we use now are over 300 watt. So I've seen lots of schools where, lots of situations where people have gone in, because they're easy and they're relatively cheap, they put 100 watt panels on the school roof, and they're not really very good. 100 watt panel never reaches 100 watt. It's the same as a 300 watt panel never reaches 300 watts. But the bigger the panel, the less space it takes up per watt, and the more likely you are to get a reasonable power consumption out of it. So we decided to match the power that we knew we were going to use with the power that we could collect using solar panels. And having done that, then we needed to know, well, what's the cost of this? We had a rough idea because we've been putting lots of solar panels in. And as a general rule of thumb, to put a set of solar panels in a school, 4 or more, which is a reasonable amount of electricity, you're going to need to spend in the region of £5,000. You won't get much change out of £5,000. The computers themselves are really important. The government in Zambia have recently given schools ordinary PCs. They're old PCs, they've been refurbished and they've put them into schools. And in our last visit, a few weeks ago, I must have visited about 10 schools, and every one of them had these PCs standing on the side doing nothing. And the reason for that is they just don't have the energy to keep them going. Worse than that, and I predict this, that schools that do use these old computers will soon find their solar systems, if they have them, absolutely defunct. Lead acid batteries are what you use with solar stuff. And unfortunately, one of the big problems with lead acid batteries, and you'll know if you've got a car, if you drain the battery, then over a period of probably less than a year, it'll become dead. And I know I've seen that happen on so many places. So it's really critical when you put any of this solar stuff in to make sure that the local community understand the cost of this resource in terms of time and maintenance. Solar panels are very susceptible to dust. If you don't wash them regularly, just a bucket of cold water and a cloth, not during the daytime when the sun is hot, but during the twilight, during the early morning, you can get up on top of the roof if they're on the roof. A lot easier if they're on the ground, but not many people do that because it's too easy to nick them, steal them, I mean. So if you go up on the roof with a damp cloth and you wash the panels when there's dust on them, you're not going to have very many problems. Similarly with the battery, if you look after the battery and you don't drain it, you won't have many problems. We found really useful for the battery, and all this is in the notes, so you don't have to make notes. Really useful for the battery is to have a very simple fuel gauge, if you like, which can tell you what the state of the battery is. And the one we use is one from Midnight Solar. It is very expensive. It costs about $60 to $80, which the only thing is, why spend that much on a fuel gauge? Well, it's a very good fuel gauge, and it's very simple. It's got a series of red, amber, and green LEDs, and you can see very easily. You don't have to look at numbers. You don't have to look at percentages. You don't have to look at amps. You can see red, amber, and green. If it's green, everything's fine. If it's amber, you've got to stop what you're doing and think where the energy is going, because it's losing energy. If it's red, don't touch it for at least a week and hope it'll recover. But, you know, once it's gone into the red, once it's used half its capacity, not, you know, half a battery's capacity is gone, it starts to deteriorate. So it's really, really important to understand that yourselves, and to understand that the others who you're working with understand that as well. So cleaning the solar panels, maintaining or checking the battery is really important.
You've got a couple of minutes, Howard.
Okay. The last thing I will say then, all this stuff is in the notes. It'll be all right. When it comes to connecting to the internet, in rural areas, most of the routers that you buy in town, in Lusaka, whether it's MTN, Zamtel, or so on, they're not good enough to pick up remote signals. So you can give people a router and it's still not very good. So what you need is a good router. And in the notes, I've made a note of what I think a good router is. And this is after giving lots of different routers to lots of different schools and finding out which are the best ones. You need a good router, and you also need a good antenna. A good router will cost you over £100, and a good antenna will cost you over £100. So although that is a huge outlay, £200, it's essential in a rural area where you want to get a good signal that you can use Zoom or WhatsApp and all those things for. One final thing I'll say about that: be careful if you connect a school to the internet. Make sure that you can keep the school safe. Both adults and children are very vulnerable to all sorts of, I'll use the word crap, on the internet. It is dangerous to set up an internet connection. It is very easy for a technical person to set up something that will filter all that stuff out. And in fact, you know, you don't have to look for a real expert. Once it's set up, all you need is a good administrator in the school, someone that's good at IT, and all he'll do is check that no one messes about with it. Okay, is that too long, or am I all right?
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. No,
okay. As I say, all these things I'll pass on to you, Julian, and then people can read them for themselves.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's really helpful. Okay. And we do have also, if anybody has any questions for Howard, we've got a couple of minutes to see. We do have a question from Cecilia, which is to start with, which is, how did it work for children with disabilities?
Yes, you can get Braille printers. They're not that expensive and they're fairly easy to use. With the Raspberry Pi, there's a piece of software called Orca, which helps children with sight difficulties. So you can magnify areas of the screen. You can have the actual screen itself can be verbal, so that if you can't see very well, Orca will translate not just what might be being said, but it will translate the menus and the various bits on the system. It's not easy to use. If you have difficulty with sight and you use it a lot, you will become familiar with it, and it's easier than me going in and using it. I find it very irritating because it says everything that's going on, but certainly it's better than not having anything. The Braille stuff, if you do supply a school with a Braille printer, it's really important to make sure that it's set up properly and people know how to fix it if it isn't. It's not a monumental problem. You know, it's something that you could easily train a teacher in a school to do. But they're the only two things that I know that we've used.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that. We don't have any more questions immediately in the chat, though Howard is going to be hanging around, hopefully.
Yes.
So if there are any more questions, then please do put them in the chat. And if we have a little bit of time at the end, we can also come back and mop up any issues that we haven't dealt with. So what is I'll carry on with a little bit more presentation. And then we will have another case study quite soon. So what I'm going to talk about generally, if I can get that to work, beautiful, is kind of background to internet access in Africa. And one of the challenges with all of these things of trying to do workshops and information which is talking about Africa is that Africa is a very large and very diverse continent with an awful lot of things going on, and nowhere so much, I suppose, as in internet access. Indeed, there are a number of countries in Africa that have got far better levels of telephone coverage than the UK does. And when you look at the percentages of people in Africa who've got some internet access, then you can see from this that it's massively wide-ranging, and goes from Kenya, where they've got very significant levels of the population is covered and has got some access at 85%, down to Eritrea, where the levels of access are around 7%. So a massively diverse scene and situation there. And what we have found from research work that we've done with Wales for Africa organisations and their partners was that the barriers that they talked about to getting online in Africa include the availability of data. Is there a signal where they are, and can you become attached to it? Then the cost of data. And even if you can get data, then it can be massively expensive. And again, it ranges from very, very cheap in Somalia, for example, to incredibly expensive in Zimbabwe. A lack of hardware is a problem that's been cited by a lot of people as well, or a lack of decent hardware that people are often using quite old, quite secondhand and not very good equipment. A lack of expertise was another one that was very popular, that that people are not really sure of what is available and they don't know how to use it. The availability or cost of electricity was a serious barrier to large chunks of the population. And again, even if electricity is available, then it can be quite expensive. And what we're seeing possibly is likely to become more and more of an issue across Africa as the technology develops and becomes cheaper, is more about government control or taxation of the internet. And we've seen significant withdrawals of service in various African countries because of the actions of the government. It's also important in thinking about technology and the development of new technologies is the impact that they are likely to have on inequality. And this graphic was produced by the United Nations Conference of Trade and Development, of all people, and looks at the growth of inequality due to, or at least alongside, technological change over the past few hundred years. And if you can see, the graph there goes from 1700 up to the present day, and it looks at the levels of income, so the levels of GDP per head of population in countries who are core to the sorts of technological developments. So countries that are embracing and making use of developments from steam train to cars to ICT, and what's happened on an international level is that the development of technology has massively increased levels of inequality between countries around the world. But as well as driving inequality between countries, then new technologies can also drive inequality within countries. And what we're seeing at the moment is that as more technology is taken up by people across Africa, that the people who are missing out are those who are poor. Women and girls are missing out, disabled people are missing out, and minority ethnic and linguistic groups are also being excluded from the benefits that are coming from digital developments. So the conclusion of all of that is that it's incredibly important, if we are trying to do something good, if we're trying to run project work to help the people who are most in need, to be aware that new technology can exacerbate those inequalities, that when you introduce a new asset into a community, say a new technology, then there's a strong risk that it will be exploited by those people who already have the most power within that community. And so that's why it's important, if you're thinking about running a project to help people to access the internet, that you use a gender equality and social inclusion toolkit to help you to understand the community that you're working with, and help you to understand how you can design your project to support the people within that community who most need it. I'll share some information about some gender equality and social inclusion toolkits within the notes for the workshop. So that brings us to our second case study. This is from Responsible Assistance, who've been working with disabled people's organizations in Kenya. We have a couple of speakers, but to introduce, I'd like to bring in Trevor Palmer from Responsible Assistance, and he can kick things off, but I will, thank you, Trevor. I will stick with, we have some photos to accompany your presentation. So hello, Trevor, and hello, Cecilia.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to address everybody today. It's greatly appreciated. Anyway, I'll give everybody here a quick background on Responsible Assistance FERSHA initiative, which began in 2020. FERSHA, meaning opportunity in Swahili, is an initiative to assist disabled people to create their own sustainable enterprises. Right. The Kenyan region of Kibwesi is mostly rural, and especially away from the one main town there. And there's a lot of poverty, and literacy levels are really low. There is no public welfare, and people with disabilities rely on family support to survive, and disabled people's access to education is incredibly limited. Anyway, since Responsible Assistance exploration visit to Kenya in 2013, we've been partnering with Dr. Cecilia Nyaga, who is now our project coordinator in Responsible Assistance FERSHA initiative. Initially, 3 FERSHA groups were supported, and these 3 enterprises had just become ready to trade independently, and that's compliant with local regulations, and having received the necessary banking, financial accountability, organization skills and responsibilities when the COVID-19 pandemic spread across the world. And many communities throughout this rural region became totally cut off due to no public transport and restricted movement from outside the region. Anyway, Welsh Government, whilst for Africa COVID-19 emergency COVID-19 response fund, joint funded a Responsible Assistance emergency mission to reach out and support communities throughout the region with food and basic provisions. FERSHA group members made face masks, produced soap and other provisions, as well as harvested food, which was distributed by 2 motorcycles across the region. Anyway, at the end of this lasted for 6 months, and at the end of the well, it lasted about 9 months actually, and it's still going on to an extent. Anyway, then at the end of the emergency mission, there was a surplus of £1,000, which remained in the budget, which was supposed to be spent here in Wales, but we didn't need to spend it. It was needed more over there, and we got permission to send it over to Kenya. And what we did with this was really interesting. We developed it into small micro loans. These loans are between £3.40, which is 500 Kenyan shillings, and £34, which is 5,000 Kenyan shillings. And they were made available to first group members to take advantage, to fund their trading activities, to get to kick things off. Anyway, these loans are obviously paid back at a very small amount of interest compared with what the only other means of these people, the first group members having access to finance, would be from money lenders. And we're all probably aware of the implications when you borrow from money lenders. So anyway, the Welsh Government's Wales and Africa programme have now joint funded with us to take things even further, and we're looking at ways to incorporate digital technology to further develop the group's sustainabilities. So anyway, the things are going okay, so I'm pleased to say. And I'm going to introduce you all to Dr. Cecilia now, and she's going to explain how we're deploying this digital support. So over to you, Cecilia. Cheers.
Cecilia, you're on mute.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we have gotten the background. What I would like to add is that each group is composed of people with disabilities from the same neighborhood. And so they have the same interests and they have the same challenges. And why they came together is to try and address their common challenges. All the group members either have a disability or they are parents of children with disabilities. And the women form 70 to 80% of the group members. They come from very poor backgrounds, and so it was seen necessary that they could benefit from support to earn a living. And of course, responsible assistance came in very handy. Where did we start from? First, we had to carry out an overview study so that we can explore the actual challenges on the ground. Then we also carried out a need-based training from what we had gotten from the overview study, the gaps in knowledge. Then we carried out a pilot program, 3 groups that already Trevor said. And the 3 groups were facilitated with the skills to self-monitor as well as to evaluate their progress. The individuals in the groups hence started small businesses with the help of responsible assistance. For purposes of sustainability, a revolving fund initiative was applied. What were the key communication challenges? 1, limited skills in regards to enterprise development necessary for their economic well-being, affordability of the communication tools, skills to operate the smartphones, limited or no access to internet services in some areas, lack to limited power access in the local villages, low literacy levels, of course, as Trevor said, and lack of limited communication tools among the groups. The group reports sent through borrowed raw quality funds were most times illegible, and this almost halted the progress of the project. Also because the borrowed funds, they had to pay for them, and it was quite expensive for them. Lack of digital devices to help the deaf and the blind persons to access required information and communication. The interventions that we made to improve communication access was smartphones and solar power banks were bought and distributed to the groups. Each group was given a smartphone, a solar power bank, and an extension cable. The first two groups were also given phone tablets each. Each group was to share the phone for the purpose of documenting group activities. To make this possible, each group developed a phone maintenance and safety policy. The groups had limited phone operation skills, and this promoted responsible assistance to further training to enable the groups to effectively use their phones. Training on the use of smartphones as communication tools was carried out to the first three groups. During training, the groups were given skills on how to use the solar power banks to charge their phones. An informal need-based adult education strategy was devised. Groups were facilitated to develop their own need-based monitoring tools. The immediate results after the above interventions were communication was enhanced and group reports arrived on time. These were both clear and legible thanks to responsible assistance. The group members became more confident in carrying out their businesses. They felt happy to forward pictures of their business progress. The groups have upscaled their kit through savings and interest generated every month. Groups have have since increased their borrowing power from the initial 3,000 to 7,000 Kenya shillings, and this translates to the growth of their business. 6 more groups were trained on how to initiate and develop small-scale enterprise. The groups were funded for enterprise development. The 6 groups were provided with smartphones and power banks. This has enhanced their communication abilities greatly. What lessons did we learn? Communication is a crucial strategy towards improving the quality of life for persons with disabilities. Access to communication equipment among persons with disabilities living in the rural deprived areas can help in poverty alleviation. Communication tools are key to economic inclusion of persons with disabilities and their families. To enable the persons with disabilities to effectively use the digital communication tools, training about the application of the same is a necessity. It is important to include functional adult education skills during the process of improving the economic well-being for persons with disabilities and their families. It is important to link application of the communication equipment to the immediate and relevant needs of the groups, as well as individual members. Digital support to projects help in cost effectiveness. Then what recommendations are we giving? Communication tools should be availed to groups of persons with disabilities. Solar power banks should be provided to persons with disabilities living far from the power points. All disability programs should look into possibilities of integrating digital support into their day-to-day activities. Persons with disabilities should be provided with need-based skills through focused training programs. It is important to carry out an overview study of the current status before the actual takeoff of the projects. It's important to pilot the project so as to pave way for future sustainability. Making use of solar energy should be encouraged so as to enable inclusion to information access. Avail digital support to persons who are blind as well as those are deaf. And that's what I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. That's quite informative. And by the way, Julian's got a copy of this script, so it'll be available for anybody to see if they require it. But anyway, listen, we're continually learning so much of what technology is best for specific purposes. And I've had to adapt to a trial and error approach around what is available on the local markets. It's been a learning curve. And partnering with disabled people's organisation is essential in our work, and as we can all learn together. The First Initiative now has 9 groups of disabled people and their families, totaling 212 members. Soon we will be ready to expand the First Initiative further afield and partner with disabled people's organisations in other African countries with our First Your Time programme, which will be launched in 2023. And what I'm going to do in the chat room now, I'm just posting up a link to our website current activities, so people can access responsible assistance. It's just going in there now, and they're just doing it to see just so they can find out more about the First Initiative and also what responsible assistance is all about. So I think we've timed that to a second, have we not, Julian?
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, I think that was perfect.
Excellent, thanks.
So well done. That's good to set the pace for everyone. I think let's see if there are any questions, first of all, for Trevor or Cecilia, and then we can have a brief little break just to refresh ourselves for 4 minutes. First of all, if there are any questions, if you could pop them in the chat box, or if you could raise your hand. I can't see anything happening at the moment. Okay. Well, what I'd like to do then is have a very quick break, just so everybody can relieve themselves, go get a glass of water or anything else you need. And we will restart in 4 minutes. So make a note of that, and we will be back very shortly. Wonderful. So welcome back.
Hello, Joylene.
Letty, we haven't lost you.
Yeah, I keep on being lost. I don't know what's going on.
Oh dear. Okay, right. Well, we've got a few minutes before you're due to come on. Do you think that, we will manage that?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Okay. Fantastic. So what I will do then is to crack on with the next bit, which is just to talk about some of the things that come out of all of that, and I think some of the things which come out of working with different people in different environments who've got different levels of access to the internet. This is partly based on some research that was done a few years ago by the University of Sussex, looking at civil society engagement in the Philippines. But it has a lot of lessons for people who are trying to work with different communities who've got different levels of access to the internet. And that is the first finding was the digital divide is not binary, and that there is a digital divide, that there are people in the world who've got very strong access to the internet, and there are people who've got very little. But it's not a question just of whether somebody does or does not have some theoretical access to the internet, and that their ability to make the most of internet access depends on several factors. And they devised what they call the 5 A's of technology access. And I'd like you to bear all of these in mind if thinking about implementing a project, that you need to consider not just bringing the internet to a location, but you need to consider for the internet and for all types of technology, availability of that technology, to whom is it available, and are they able to make use of it? Affordability is a key one. And just because something is there does not mean that it's affordable, and that some people may have great difficulty in paying to get online, to use the different technologies, the different equipment that is possible. Something very important is awareness, is to consider who is aware of these developments. If they're not aware of it, then it doesn't matter if it's available or affordable, because they won't be going to make use of it anyway. And then abilities, who has got the ability to make use of these things. So very important to consider in doing any sort of project work, is to consider the abilities of the people that you're working with. And it may be that the main interventions are not technological. They could be about training, they could be about skills development and skills sharing within the community. And finally, agency. Who is it who has the self-efficacy, they call it, to make use of the technology? And again, this is a really important area in dealing with projects where you're trying to involve people who've got very little, and that very often being oppressed, being marginalized, means that even if the technology is available and affordable, if you don't feel that you can make the most of it, if you don't feel that you're able to do things in your own life, then you're not going to. So it may be that work is required along all of these fronts if you're trying to support people to get online and to make the most of the internet. So I'd like to go now to Letty to talk about a project that she's been involved in bringing the internet to rural schools in Zimbabwe. Letty, I hope you haven't fallen off again, but we will see, won't we?
Letty's here.
Yay!
I just need Letty to put a video on so that I can spotlight her, if that's okay.
Fantastic. I'll stop screen sharing. And hey, Letty, good of you to join us. And Letty, you're on mute. Letty, Yes. Fab.
We can hear you now, Letty.
Is that all right now?
Yeah, it's a little bit clunky there, Letty.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah. Hello. Hello, everyone. What's going on? Hello, everyone.
Hello, Letty.
Can I start now? Is it just me, not? Oh dear. Hello? I don't know.
Letty, we can hear you.
We can hear you, Letty.
Go ahead, Letty.
Okay, so do you want me to okay. Okay, as you had the introduction from Joylene, from Zangari Women's Cooperative. Today, we are going to give you an overview of the project that we started in 2020. This was the COVID-related program that gave us an opportunity to introduce IT to the rural folks, rural schools. So I'm going to hand you over to Tanyarazwa, who is going to give you an overview of the whole project. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm not sure if you can see my screen.
Over to you, Ta.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you fine.
We can see you and we can see your screen and we can hear you. You're good to go, Tanya.
Okay. Okay, great. So I'll just give you an overview of the project. So we targeted two schools in one community which we're already working with in Chomzangari, Takarasha, and another school, Orton's Drift in the Midlands. So what we did is we installed, both schools had limited power supply. One doesn't have any power supply at all, and the other had limited power supply. So in order to establish a computer lab for each school, we installed a solar power system, which included the solar panels, the inverter, and storage battery. And that overall cost around 2,500 for each school. So the overall cost about 500 for the solar system. And then we had some computers, 20 computers donated by DVLA, in which we donated 10 to each school. These computers were just shells when they were donated. So we had to install hard drives and an operating system for each computer, which was done by our partners at Giakonda. So they installed software called Rachel, which is a learning platform, which basically has preloaded learning resources, so books and that kind of thing on it. And then a Raspberry Pi server, so that these computers can talk to each other, and it's easier for the teachers to conduct the learning. And then we also donated 2 smart TVs, so 1 to each school, for the interactive learning aspect, so that there's visual and audio associated with the learning, and also they can learn from things like YouTube and that kind of thing. So I guess that's just an overview of what the project was. And if I go to the next slide, show you a couple of pictures. So on the left, you've got Mzondo High School. On the right, you've got Orton's Drift. I guess I just picked some pictures to show you the setup of the computers, the solar panels, and the actual batteries and inverters. So yeah, and so this project was quite successful in that it allowed these children, like in Orton's Drift, the second school, there was no computers there at all, and there was no power source. So it allowed them to have power and computers at once, which was great for them. And in Orton's Drift, they already had some desktop computers, but they were very slow and didn't have much memory. So these laptops also improved their way of learning and gave them more computers to work with. And along with the power supply as well, it meant that they always had power and can also charge their phones and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'll hand you over back to Letty.
Okay. I think we will have had that overview. As I said earlier, that we were only given 20 minutes, so we were going to budget the time evenly. Now I'm going to hand you over to Mr. Dube. Mr. Dube is the deputy head of Mzondo High School. So he is going to give us, he is going to explain, because they are the people on the ground. He is going to explain how everything has changed in the school. And yeah, so Mr. Dube, over to you.
Thank you very much, Letty, for the opportunity. Yes, I'm the deputy head in Mzondo High School. We got a donation of 10 laptops, a smart TV, and a solar system. And the donation has gone a long way in promoting learning at Mzondo High School. Actually, we are seeing a good improvement from the donations. In terms of their laptops, they have promoted online learning, especially in this COVID era, where there is need for social distancing, and we are seeing our laptops giving us a good advantage on that. We are also having some other learners who are also having online exams, especially the outsiders. They are also getting the facility, and they are also helping in that way. We also have these computers, they are also helping us in the facilitation of distance learning, which has been made easier. And as a result of that, we are also very thankful to the support that we got. We also have in our new curriculum the continuous learning, the continuous assessment learning activities, which calls for a lot of researches on the side of the learners, and the computers. They are also helping our learners in a very good way to access the information. Remember, these laptops, they have got a server that has information within them, and they are getting this information in an easier way. Even if our learners are offline, they can get the information. Also, with respect to our teachers, they are also using the donated laptops to research, typing of the examination, online learning, they also download the information, saving the information on the laptops. Then our learners will then, at the end of the day, get the access to that information. We also, as a school, we are also using the laptops to compile reports, preparation of reports, like our annual reports, and we also even use the laptops to store information that is necessary for the school. So we are more like going into the paperless world. We also got a donation of a TV, which we are also using at Mzondo High School to facilitate the learning and teaching process. We are using it to browse information from the internet. So our learners, they also use it to watch academic related tutorials, documentaries, and videos, which we think that will then enhance the learning process for our learners. We are also using that same TV to make presentations, especially for teachers who may think that they also have the videos which are necessary to enhance the learning process. So that is also going a long way in facilitating the learning and teaching process. We also got a donation from the solar system. Of course, we had limited power, but the coming in of this solar system has gone a long way in creating a stable and reliable source of energy for the school. So much so that we now have electricity on a 24/7, 365 days in a year without any difficulties. We are using the power to connect our computers, our television, even as we do the printing. We also have a siren at our school, which we are also, which is also connected to the same solar system, and it is benefiting us in a long way. Generally, I can say the donation has greatly improved our school, so much that we feel that in the long run, our pass rate is likely to improve greatly. We also got a donation in the form of reusable pads for girls, and those that donation is also resulted in a reduced number of absentees from our girls. Remember, when they go for their periods, some of which are because of them failing to get this necessary equipment, they may end up not coming to school. But currently, as they got that assistance, we are seeing an improvement as we take on our registers in terms of attendance. So basically, we are very grateful to the donation we got through the support of Letty, and we do hope that if we can also get more laptops, more tablets for our learners, a projector, if not more of them, even to some extent a printer, although we appreciate that there is need now for us to go into the paperless world, but we still feel that currently, as our situation, there is at least a need for a computer and a printer. We also have another challenge, especially in line with our water system, which we feel that because of inconsistent supply of electricity from our ZESA, we feel that if we can once again get another solar system for that area, it is also going to help in a long way, especially our girls, as they can use it, especially during lunch, to wash their pads when they mess up. I thank you.
Okay,
Let me
thank you very
once
much,
again give
Mr. Dube for.
Hello.
Okay, carry on, but I think your time is running out. Mr. Dube, can you carry on, please?
Thank you. I wanted to give you over to one of our learners so that she can expand further on how they are benefiting from the services.
The donation
Oh,
of
thank you.
The donation of laptops has helped us to research on, especially the girl child. It has helped us to be creative and have freedom of expressing, and it has also helped us to be independent. Like, for example, we can now research on how to make sanitary reusable pads, and we can also for those that do lessons, they can also do lessons online. And it has also helped the girl child to be assisted on their rights and know their rights. And it is also motivating the students of Musondo High School to now do computer science as a subject. And our school can now process exam papers with the use of the computers. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Miss. Thank you very much, Mr. Dube and Chipo. So I think you have heard what Mr. Dube have explained and how they are benefiting with the donation, the computers, the technology that was given to them by WCVA. I am going to invite this community coordinator of the area, Mr. Edmund Macheka, if he can also explain and tell us how the community is benefiting from this from these computers that were installed last year. Mr. Macheka, are you around? Edmund Macheka?
Hello. Yes, I'm available.
Okay, can you please take your mask off so that we can hear you better, please?
Okay, done.
Okay, over to you, Mr. Macheka.
Okay. On behalf of Chomzangari Women's Cooperative, we are very excited about this development, as we were active participants in everything that was going on. This community will benefit much more than has been said by Mr. Dube. You will find that there is a lot of interest in the surrounding area, which is coming from an interest in knowing more about Musondo High, which is coming out of this development and donation. What I would just want to say is maybe if connectivity could be improved by way of maybe putting a booster of sorts close to the school. I think from a layperson's point of view, that will help the smooth operations of this whole system that's in place at Mzondo High.
Okay. Is that all, Mr. Macheka, or I can give you another extra minute if you have anything more to expand?
Well, the booster I have just referred to does not only help Mzondo High's connectivity, even the local community will definitely benefit, including from Zangari Women's Project. I would say that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Macheka, for all the work and the coordination that you're doing within the area, as well as the school. That your work is greatly appreciated. Now I'm going to hand you over to the Women's Cooperative, Mrs. Mandima. She is the spokesperson of Chomzangari Women's Cooperative. So if she can tell us how women and girls are benefiting from this computer system in the village, from the village point of view, can she tell us anything to do with the computers, how they are benefiting or not benefiting? Mrs. Mandema, over to you.
Thank you. Hello, Letty.
Hello, Mbuya.
First of all, thank you. We want to thank you for affording us this opportunity to attend this very important meeting. We, as Chomzangari Women's Cooperative, are benefiting immensely from the connectivity we have through these computers. I can say we now have an enlightened community, which has no difference between rural or urban setting for our girls. Computers are also a social amenity for our girls, because right now they have no time for gossiping and loitering. They spend more of their time on researching information, which is going to benefit them on their schoolwork. As you know, Mzondo is a large catchment area, so it means these computers do not only benefit Mzondo, they benefit even the surrounding communities. We, as Chomzangari Women's Corp, attended workshops on set on the making of reusable sanitary pads, and we intend to use the skill to make sanitary pads, which we donated to Mzondo High. These are extremely helpful to the girls because, one, they are a cost-cutting measure. Money used to buy pads will now be used for other essentials. They are hygienic and safe to use, thus alleviating period poverty for the girls who now have equal opportunity with their boy child, because they no longer miss out on school every month. Going forward, we want to share the making of these pads with communities around us, because we have seen that they are very helpful and useful to our girl children. These computers benefit even the local government departments around us. We hope to produce more and more of these sanitary pads. Let me say, connectivity is good for the school, but we as a community at large, we also need it so that we can communicate with our friends and relatives abroad. Right now, we have to travel to the school to get connected. girls leave everything at school. So if connectivity is widespread, it means even when they are at home, they can research and read wherever they are. Where the girls live, there is no connectivity. So we hope that, like Mr. Macheka has elaborated, we need a booster so that we can get connected 24/7. Let me thank the Welsh government for all they've done for Chomzaka Women's Scope. I thank you, Letty.
Oh, thank you very much, Mrs. Mandima from Chomzangari Women's Cooperative. I think looking at our time, we are going to move on to this other new project, which is in the Midlands of the country. We've shared the same equipment with them. We get them 10 laptops as well, and we also put solar panels in the same way we did for Mzoro High School. This is Autumn Drift High School. It is in the Midlands province of the country. So I'm going to hand you over to the ICT teacher, who is about 3 weeks old in the school, and he is going to explain what connectivity is doing to that area. Over to you, Mr. Mapfumo. Mr. Mapfumo, are you there?
Hey, thank you.
Okay. Can you please tell us how far you have gone and how the equipment have been received within the community that you are working in?
Okay. Okay, we received, as Ms. Chimbe has already highlighted, we received 10 laptops as well as the solar system for use to power those laptops, the television set. So the community is very happy about this donation. We are using those laptops to deliver lessons. We just introduced ICT, the subject, computer science, to Autumn Drift Secondary School. So now we're able to teach the subject because we have the resources, the computers. Also, the other teachers, they're able to use that to deliver their lessons. We're also using the television set to deliver lessons. For example, we can project our laptop screens to the television set. For example, when we are running maybe the PowerPoint presentations, practical lessons, we can show the kids how to do some of the things on the television set. It's easier to manage a bigger group of learners using that television set than instructing them on individual laptops. Is difficult that way. So using the television set, the 40-inch one, it's easier to carry out instruction to the learners. However, we have challenges. The solar system was struck by lightning around November 2021. So we are having challenges in terms of power. However, efforts are being done so that the inverter, which was struck by lightning, can be replaced. We also had challenges with the internet. Our internet system, the modem, was also struck by lightning during the rain season. However, that has been replaced. So right now our internet is now working such that the students can use it to access the internet to do their researches. Teachers can research on their specific learning areas so that learning can be enhanced. We also we're also planning to incorporate the community into our ICT tools, because there's a very big digital gap between the community and compared to other communities, especially in towns. There's a challenge, there's a digital gap, so we intend to bridge that digital gap. However, the challenge is that we have a few laptops to bridge that. If we can have more, we are planning to introduce maybe lessons to those who didn't have that opportunity to have ICT education during the time when they did their schooling. So we are planning to introduce that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. So Letty, is that it? Has anybody got any urgent questions for Letty and for everybody who's been talking about their project?
Okay, I also had one girl child who is enthusiastic about sharing. I had given her 3 minutes. I don't know if you can allow that. Her name is Tinotenda. Tinotenda, as you can see, our time is running out. Can you please tell us about how the computers have helped you as a girl child in a secondary school in the rural areas?
Okay, so this donation of the computer equipment and the solar system has helped us a lot as the students of the Drift Secondary School. So the first thing is it has increased our productivity, and with a good understanding of the software running on them, we have become more productive at everything which we do. So for example, we have a basic understanding of using a word processor. So we are now able to create, edit, and print documents and letters. Computers have made learning more flexible and easy to access. Students are now gaining knowledge and information not only from classroom assignments and libraries, but also from available online resources. So this donation of the computer equipment has helped us a lot, because we are now able to research information which we are able to get from the textbooks. But now, due to the shortage of the textbooks in this school, we are now able to use internet as a source of getting information. So these computers have contributed a lot of hard work in our school, because it has also increased the number of students and also the pass rate, guys, because there was a problem of shortage of textbooks. So due to the shortage of textbooks, there was a low pass rate. So right now there are computers. So these computers are going to help us in researching. So we get information from researching, and there is also is it a BlackBerry Pi? A Raspberry Pi, yeah. So it is a device which we can access information or resources freely. So we are able to use it, and it is of help to us learners, because if we are offline, especially right now, we have like problems in the electricity. So if we're offline, we're able to access the Raspberry Pi. So these computers are of help to us, and it is also increases our learning techniques. So the access of information, we are also able to research about the sexuality. Most of the children find it hard and embarrassing to ask about the sexuality to the teachers. So this is helping us. So if we just grab our computer and just research a little bit about sexuality, we get information, and we easily understand the information. So this is of help to us students. It enhanced most of communication. We are also able to communicate with other schools, which may be like pertaining the activities which may be done, like maybe competitions or what. So we are also able to communicate through these laptops. So this is of help to us, and we really thank you, the Cymru Zangaris Women Cooperative, in partnership with the Welsh Government and Africa Grant Scheme. So we really thank you for this donation because it is of use to us children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tinotenda.
Thank you. Wonderful.
So,
thank you.
Over to you, Joylene.
Okay, fab. Thank you. So what I'd like to do is I will just touch on a couple of other areas before we come to hear from Torai as well. We don't have that much time, so I'm going to have to canter through a little bit of the importance in doing any of these projects is to think about risks. And in any project that you do, you need to think about risks. But when you're introducing a new electricity supply, when you're introducing the internet to a new community, then it's particularly important to consider some of these. I would say that you really need to consider gender-based violence and harassment, that there have been a lot of reports from women in Africa that they have been abused online, and that again is really halting efforts to boost equality and to get women to benefit from the internet. Bullying is something that anybody can be subject to, and is again something that happens a lot online. There's a basic rule that if you leave a man in a room alone with the internet, then he's likely to start accessing pornography. You probably don't want that to happen as a result of your project, so you can put in place measures to stop that happening and to ensure that people, particularly in schools, but not just in schools, are accessing things that they should be and not things that they shouldn't be. As Howard has mentioned, there's an awful lot of misinformation online as well. And you need to consider that when giving people access to the internet, that they will access everything, and that there is an awful lot of rubbish going on out there. If you are thinking of working with second-hand equipment, then I would be very careful. Howard has got some advice on that, which we will circulate, that very often using second-hand laptops like Cymru Zangari have can be quite useful and quite helpful, but sending second-hand desktop computers is probably a really bad plan because they use a lot of energy and they're likely just to end up as a waste problem, as we are sending so much waste to Africa. And then really important thing is, if you are working with solar equipment and installing solar equipment, then you need to use experts and you need to work with electricians, because large amounts of electricity can be very dangerous. So we don't want people just messing around with things. So we're going to go now to our final case study. I think we have Martha, and we also have Torai. Martha wanted to give a quick introduction. So Martha's from Love Zimbabwe, and Torai is there in Zimbabwe with their partner organization. Martha, are we able to go to you to start talking?
Oh, hi, Joylene.
Hello,
Thank
Martha.
you so much. Thank you so much for providing this platform. It's really nice to hear what others are doing. I really enjoyed listening to what Cymru Zangari is doing. I think we are also taking a leaf out of that. I just thought I would introduce Torai, who is the manager of Chinamhora Community Center, where we work directly with mothers of disabled children. So we have got quite a varied, our projects, they vary from working with schools through partnerships, and we also have community projects where we engage the mothers in crop protection, as well as educating about things such as hygiene, making arts and crafts. So it's quite a huge inclusive work that we are doing. So I'm not going to take your time. I will leave Taurai to tell us development, what has been happening at the Community Center, our challenges and our successes. And once again, we are very grateful to the Wales and African partners, because without the support of the government, all this is impossible. Thanks, Giakonda.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Taurai Sinaro, and I live here in Zimbabwe. I'm the manager of Chinamhora Community Center, which is in Doboshawa, just 35 kilometers north of Harare. We work in partnership with Love Zimbabwe charity, which is based in the UK. We run projects such as organic crop production, arts and crafts making, chicken rearing, and others. Our target group are parents with disabled children, and at the community center, we receive around 50 people almost on a daily basis. That is the mothers and their children. They come to do projects, whilst the children, they come to utilize our facilities. We've got a sensory room that is filled with toys for the disabled children. And also we've got like play areas around the community center whereby they just go around doing like in swings and in all sorts. So basically the community center is open to everybody who would feel like they want to use it. Because we've got also a library which was opened last year in August. We've got different books which they start from the young age to tertiary education. So anybody can come and use our resources. In 2017, we received a visitor from the UK. His name was John Gibbs. He was very qualified in solar systems. We managed to get some funding from the Wales and Africa community partnerships, and we bought solar panels and inverters, which were installed by John Gibbs, and he also trained us on how to use solar systems. As it was being said that you really need to have some expertise when you connect these systems, otherwise they won't last. So we were very fortunate to have that. We also have been very fortunate to receive some funding from the WCV again to set up computers in the library. So we managed to get 5 laptops and 1 monitor, which is in the library. But our main challenges they stem from connectivity. We tried to get connected through the one main company, which is still one, the government. And the quotation they gave us was just too much. They gave us a quotation of about $4,000 and we couldn't afford it. So we mainly use our computers offline. And the students, they come, they learn how to use the computers. We sometimes teach them, but some of them they already know, because most of the schools now have got computers. But it is still an advantage for them. When we also have partnership links with schools in the UK and here. So they use the community center as their base, because some of the schools have got no internet access. So when they come, we just use mobile internet to connect them with the schools, and we can have like Zoom meetings between schools, or even links between students, mainly from primary schools. We also have a challenge with, even though we've got solar systems, but they're quite small, because we've got to run our bore using solar. We also have to we give some people, they come with their phones mainly to charge. So we give them some space to charge their phones and the likes. But because there's normally no power, it becomes a challenge because we ideally would really need to have all computers working during the day so that everybody can have access. There are 5, but we can't. Our system can only sustain 2 so far. And also, we also need to have our ZESA upgraded. We wanted to have, we've got 3 phases, but their transformer is dead at the moment, so we don't have electricity as we speak. We only use solar. So those are the challenges that we face in Zimbabwe mainly. And apart from that, I would really like to thank the WCVA for the support they give us. Like Martha was saying, if it wasn't for them, maybe we wouldn't be having any of these facilities that we offer to the community in Chinamhora. And I would like to thank you, Joylene, and everybody.
Thank you, Toray. If anybody has any questions for Toray or for Martha, then please, we're moving into kind of final opportunities to put them into the chat. But I think we are all right, in which case we've got about 9 minutes to finish. And we will be, as I've mentioned, we'll be circulating a lot of the information that we've had. I'm sorry, I'm actually in a really bright room, but it looks like I'm incredibly shady. So I'm sorry about that. But what we can do is I'll go back to the final slides of my presentation. Wonderful. So we've got that. I just want to give a few notes really on some sources of funding. If you're interested in implementing a project like this and you're based in Wales, then particularly you could be looking at, and that's my mistake, should say Wales and Africa grants, is that the Welsh Government makes money available for grants every few months, and that's run by WCVA. As you'll have noted, I think all of the presenters are recipients of grants from WCVA, from that Wales and Africa Grant Fund. And so keep an eye on that, because grants are available, and they will become clear as the year goes on. Hub Cymru Africa will have a small grant pot. We will be launching a very small grant scheme, I'm afraid, which is between £500 and £1,000 grants, particularly to help with digital projects. And we'll be launching that scheme probably in May of this year, but keep an eye out. Another organisation that does fund quite well, particularly for school projects, is the British and Foreign School Society. You'll find all sorts of information about grants available for international development projects, looking at the Bond website or the Hub Cymru Africa website, and I've put the URLs for those sites there. But I will be circulating this information as well to everybody whose information we have. Some final things to consider that we haven't mentioned, or maybe have been mentioned. I mean, one is that Howard mentioned particularly, but also Toray has touched on. It's questions sometimes about whether or not you need to go online at all. And clearly, if you do want to communicate with people, if you want to hold Zoom meetings, then you will need to go online. But actually, if you are looking to support a school to get access to lots of information, then there are these offline systems which you can get, which will give you access to an awful lot of information and school materials. Something to take into account also is safeguarding. And we've talked a lot about the dangers that can lurk online. So we need to be very clear when we're introducing people to the internet of what safeguarding is in place. How can we be sure that people are not being exposed to things which will cause them harm? There's a lot of support and help available from Hub Cymru Africa on safeguarding and how to develop your policies and how to implement those policies. So do make use of that. And also you need to consider privacy and data protection. If you're getting lots of people to join you online, if you're collecting information about them, then you need to be clear about how you're protecting their information, how you're protecting their privacy.